wisdom, I think, is lived, and I think wisdom is mirrored from the people that you're with.
Touching on that is something that I realise, and I've had it so many times in a session, is where like I'll have a situation, whether it's something that seems so common ground or something that seems quite bizarre and unique to my own experience. But you've always, as you said, like building up these tools, it's just like you've got this toolbox that just has so many useful things that can be applied. I'm just like, I'd love to have that amount of wisdom one day that I can then have this toolbox that I can apply to different aspects of my life and help improve, and like in conversations with others as well, and other people's own challenges. And that it's just having this, well, it's all right, I've got this huge toolbox, what do you want help with? Like, I've got all these tools, and in terms of like an introspective in your mind kind of thing. So that's, I find that quite inspirational, like realising the tools that you've developed over the years.
Do you know what's interesting about that though? Is there can be this perspective, and it was just never been my experience, maybe because I don't organise my information like that in my brain, but sometimes the perspective about gaining knowledge and wisdom is about gaining something and then filing it in that, and then gaining something and filing it in that. And I don't know if you've seen, have you seen Inside Out? No, is it Inside Out? Oh,
You're on about the Disney or
no,
Pixar
the
film?
Pixar one about that guy that doesn't want to, he's a musician.
Soul.
So
so
you know
good.
the guy in the Soul that
Yeah,
he
yeah.
knows there's one person missing, and he goes through all the files to
Yeah.
find. Coaching is, from my brain's perspective, is a bit like that, right? A human being's talking to me, they're sharing, and I'm like that, trying to find that particular key. But it's never quite filed in, okay, grief, I need to go into the grief folder, or transformation, I need to go in the transformation folder, or, you know, personal development, need to go in that folder. Is that wisdom, I think, is lived, and I think wisdom is mirrored from the people that you're with. And even now, as we have this conversation, right, your wisdom is talking to my wisdom, that's talking to your wisdom. And so in the visual of both of that being going through all the filing cabinets, it's a bit like emotional snap. I feel like, you know, even now during this conversation, that inner being within you is going, okay, so we're just trying to match all the time. And that for me is my experience of my wisdom, even though it might have come through the funnel of education or some sort of academic achievement. Where wisdom, it feels like, from a social perspective, that it's something that seems to just arrive and land. And it's not, in my opinion, it's something that builds like a tide or like the change of weather. And I think it would be nice for you to acknowledge that in this moment, there's wisdom enough to last us the whole lifetime. But the very fact that you still want more, I think, is a really cool thing.
Yeah, I'm very obsessive with the idea of like learning, constantly learning more.
Because you're already aware of your blind spots, right? What's amazing about wisdom is that you want more because there's a bit that hasn't quite landed. So you need a little bit more, a little like a buffet of wisdom and information, which I think is really cool.
I almost get scared of like, well, not scared of ignorance, but there's conversations I have where, like you mentioned, of someone will mention something like, oh, I really need to improve this skill here in order to facilitate and help with that. And I have a lot of conversations, especially like thinking back when I was doing a lot more business networking, if people would mention things, and I'm like, I don't know much about that. I really need to like step up my game here and go and deep dive into researching this topic and subject, which I like the excitement of that, and I love the idea that constantly there's going to be these things that almost scare me a little bit and I want to learn. But then as a result of that, I find I've learned so much from it. And then especially now, like in recent times, having a YouTube channel and creating content, is that as soon as I learn something or read a great book, I then create content around it to share. So then it helps me retain the information. And if I forget it, I'm like, well, I made a video on it, so I can just go back and watch it and refresh my brain there.
But do you know what's good about what you just said? Like when you get that, ooh, there's a blind spot, like there's an energy of yes, that you're intrigued and you're excited. And what's amazing is like we can notice that there's a blind spot in our knowledge because we feel how good it's going to feel having that knowledge even before having it. And that is part of the door opening process of coaching, is getting people excited about the possibility of knowing something new. And that in itself is like, it can move people completely across to a new decision, and yet they have no idea what comes next. But if you can get a human being excited about what's possible, then the blanks fills in, the grid fills in. And so what you just said is that you had a feeling, ooh, there's the space for me to learn and it's going to feel really good once I know that. And that is what the driver is to gain more information. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I love the idea of, I have it more recently, and I've noticed it especially, or I try and focus my energy around it, is just having moments of gratitude and appreciation for where I've realised things I've learned. So for example, just podcasting in this situation, the amount of knowledge, it's not even a lot of knowledge, it's just, it's enough for me to get by with it, but just knowledge of cameras and mics and how to set them up finally, and how to do all these things correctly, and then how to compose a conversation to be not too formal, not too informal, but just realising that when I started this podcast, I had no idea how to do any of those things. And now, having recorded, what is it, like a dozen episodes, doesn't seem like that many, it's still a lot of work, but having recorded those conversations, I've learned so much, and I can just like, to take that as a whole separate conversation, I could just list out things. So if someone else was like, I really want to go down this journey and I want to start a podcast, I could just list out so many things that I found helpful and so many mistakes I made. And equally that around YouTube, and equally that around skateboarding, and equally that around business, just so many different things. If people were to go into them, I just feel like I could list so many things where I've benefited and learned, and I have a lot of gratitude around knowing that I know that. You don't know what you don't know, but then when you know what you know, it's good to reflect.
So what's your biggest win then with regards to having these dozen podcasts done? What's the biggest thing that's been your biggest win on that journey?
Biggest win is, I would say, in recording series 2 and like doing it as a sole project now, is the biggest win has got to be being able to have